This is Carmel Church Online, and we're thinking about Philippians chapter 4 and the first 9 verses. And we're interested in these verses because they show us that even though we're going through a difficult time at the moment, it is actually possible to know peace. This chapter begins with an encouragement to stand firm in what was a really difficult situation for the church this letter was being written to. And one of the dangers in high-pressured environments is that people will start falling out with each other and having rows and having arguments. And that's the kind of thing that was happening in this church. But Christianity is all about peace. And peace is a flourishing life through healthy relationships, as we've been seeing. And so after urging this congregation to stand firm in the faith, Paul spends the next few verses writing out a list of instructions designed to help this church grow in their peace, because this is what it means to stand firm in difficult situations and high-pressured times. And this list of instructions, well, it comes with a promise that those who follow it will know the unknowable peace of God. And this is what we've been looking at in this series of talks. And we come now to the final instruction, which is all about thinking. So let me read the passage first. Therefore, my brothers, whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm thus in the Lord, my beloved. I entreat Euodia, and I entreat Syntyche to agree in the Lord. Yes, I ask you also, true companion, help these women who laboured side by side with me in the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honourable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. And these are the words that we are focusing on in this talk. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honourable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What we're being told here is that what we think about and how we think about it is hugely important for knowing God's peace in our lives. We need to be thinking helpful thoughts. We need to be thinking about things that are in themselves deserving of praise. Now, there are a couple of obvious problems, though, with this instruction. First, when a few talks ago I was talking about anxiety, I said that telling someone to stop feeling something doesn't actually work. In the same way, telling someone to think in a certain way also doesn't work. There's no switch or flick to change channels in our heads to something more healthy. Also, sometimes we have no choice in life but to think about things that are untruthful or even sordid. Some people actually need to do this as part of their jobs. Police officers, social workers, counsellors, for example. And besides that, all of us from time to time are thrown into situations where we have to think about these things just as part of our everyday lives. So what does it mean then that we must think about things that are laudable if in the course of our everyday lives we have to think about things that are the very opposite of that? Well, I want to suggest two answers to this question. First, what these words are encouraging is for us to train our minds so that they gravitate to those things that are true, honourable, just, and so on. Yes, we frequently have to consider those things that are certainly not pure, not lovely, not commendable. But those things that are excellent and praiseworthy are always drawing us back to them after we've considered those things that are not praiseworthy. I guess we can think of it like the Earth orbiting the Sun. Every day, as we silently circle our star, and as the Earth spins on its axis, our side of the planet must turn away from the Sun and face the darkness of space. But the planet is always continuing in its orbit, even as we face outwards into the emptiness of space. And our hemisphere ultimately always turns at some point back towards the light of the Sun once again. It's also helpful to think of this verse as referring to how we think about things, as well as to what we think about. And so even when we have to deal with the darker side of human behavior and experience, we can still think of these things in a way that is truthful, in a way that is virtuous. And so this is also dealing then with how we think about stuff. In the same way, no matter which direction the hemisphere that we're on faces, the planet exists within the gravitational field of the Sun. At any one time, we face the emptiness of space, but we're not sucked into it. We are always held in orbit around the Sun. In fact, the whole existence of our planet and everything that happens on Earth is determined by the fact that it has been captured by the Sun's gravity. In that way, all that we do, or in a rather a similar way, all that we do is influenced by that which is good, that which is true, that which is honourable, even when we have to consider those things that are not good, that are not true, that are not pure, yet still we are able, hopefully, to consider them in a way that is. So what are these things then that are true, that are honourable, just, pure, lovely, and commendable? What is it that we need to train our minds to focus on? Well, for the Apostle Paul, this is always Jesus. Jesus is the Sun whose gravitational pull draws our whole being towards him. And everything that we do is defined by the fact that we are in relationship with Jesus. Jesus is not only true, he is the truth. And in claiming this about himself, as he does in John chapter 14, he's saying that every example of truth that we find outside of him derives his truthfulness from him. The word commendable in the verse that we're looking at is frequently translated as virtuous. So what is virtuous? What are these virtuous things that we need to be thinking about? Well, Jesus is virtue itself. And all virtue that we witness and experience in life is an extension of his rule as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. When we go outside during the day, the whole of our world is overflowing with light. Now that light isn't the sun, but that's where that light comes from. All that is good in this world, and there's a heck of a lot of it, well, it comes from Jesus. He is the ultimate expression of everything that is deserving of praise. When John had his astonishing vision on the island of Patmos, he saw before the throne of God a vast multitude of angels. And they said as much. They said, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honour and glory and blessing." He's the ultimate expression of everything that is praiseworthy. But let me add one more point here about this verse. The word that the Apostle Paul uses, and which is translated in our English versions as think, it suggests a form of thinking that is pregnant with decision and action. This isn't the kind of thinking that stays in our head and never sees the light of day. This is a thinking process that prepares us to engage with the rest of the world. It readies us for life. It determines the kind of life that we live. And so we focus our thoughts. And as we focus our thoughts on Jesus, so we focus our whole lives on Jesus also. And as we consider the truth, the honor, justice, purity that emanates from him into the whole of creation, as we are captured by his gravitational field and orbit him, not only our thinking, but our entire lives become more Jesus-like. And that includes having more of the peace that he himself knew and enjoyed. We've been spending quite a bit of time, I guess, looking at the detail of God's peace. And with this verse, I feel that we're able to make more sense of the big picture here. We need to spend a little more time looking at the practicalities of how we train our minds to think about Jesus and all that is true, honourable, just, pure, and so on. And that's what we'll be doing in the next talk. But peace begins and ends with Jesus. That's the big point here. That's the big picture. He is the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Peace that Isaiah wrote about. He brought peace to the lives of the people he met and engaged with, repairing broken relationships, caring for the alienated, defending the exploited, even raising the dead. And through his life, his death, and his resurrection, the Prince of Peace can bring God's peace into our lives as well.